back to yet another triumphant and fantastical episode of Awesome Sauce for Games. I am BJ Weiler, and this time around we are going to be continuing our discussion of the subscription MMO versus the free-to-play MMO that we started last episode. And consequently, an episode that's gotten more than a few people fired up. That's good. Let's get some controversy going. Let's get some honest debate and opinionating going. And that's what we're doing. Yes, continuing last week's discussion on the 4 bullet points that people try to use to justify having a subscription in today's market, which, for the most part, isn't really supportive of a subscription MMO anymore. I mean, subscriptions aren't going to go away. You'll always have games that can handle a subscription, that do well with a subscription. We already know what the big one is. Even though they're starting to flirt with free-to-play, we can see the early signs of some free-to-play stuff that generally other games start doing when they're either going to go free-to-play or are being built from the ground up with free-to-play. And then we have some examples of other games that have been hanging on and been doing quite well with subscription, a la EVE Online, and the most recently released Final Fantasy XIV Reborn. So, personally speaking, those two games I can see definitely supporting a subscription, definitely doing well with a subscription, because they're appealing to a specific niche market. And that's why they're going to succeed, because the players in that niche market, they're appealing to those players. They've built games that work just well for those players, and those players have no problem paying for the money. To follow up on what I said last week, hey, I may be a cheap old bastard, but if something's worth my money, I am definitely going to pay my money. As evidenced, Star Wars The Old Republic, I've got 2 accounts. Like I mentioned last week, Guild Wars I bought. Ended up buying 4 total accounts for that, in addition to everything I bought from the cash shop. But again, just like I said last week, even total all that up, I still saved more money by having Guild Wars be a buy-to-play than having a subscription over the last 8+ years. But anyway, on to finish our discussion from last week. As I mentioned, there's 4 bullet points. One was bad community, which we discussed. Another was access to all content or gated content, again discussed last week. Another was quality of the updates, frequency of the updates, which again discussed last week. Now, we mentioned this 4th one last week, but I also mentioned that because this topic in and of itself is as controversial, cottonmouth, and polarizing to the community as subscription versus free-to-play is anyway, it needed an episode of its own, and hence why we are here. And that 4th bullet point, to remind everyone, is pay to win. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these arguments you will always see when it's subscription versus free-to-play. This term inevitably and invariably comes up in this discussion, and always refers to free-to-play, and it's generally used as a detriment to the free-to-play model, and that is, once again, pay to win. And in essence, pay to win is exactly what it means. You're paying real-world money to win the game, when you boil it down. Now, part of the problem with this discussion or debate, however you want to phrase it, is that pay to win really at this point in time does not have an official definition that we can all hang our hats on and that we can all use to compare one game to another on, yes, this game is pay to win, this game is not pay to win. Pretty much like the subscription versus free to play argument, a lot of it just comes down to personal preference, personal play style, and one's own opinions. So, Bearing that in mind, I did some thinking. I did a little bit of research looking around the interwebs. Now, I finally decided, in order to really hold a viable discussion and a reasonable debate on this topic, we've got to come up with an official definition. So without further ado, and here exclusively on Awesome Sauce for Games, we are going to finally have our official definition of pay to win. You ready? Here it is. As you can see, pay to win, adjective, origin, the Eastern Market MMO, almost always being a free-to-play MMO from that market. Definition: a system in a game which allows for the purchase, using real-world money, an item that is not otherwise available to be obtained in-game via normal gameplay, and that provides said player a distinct statistical advantage over another player who does not make said purchase. Now, we can provide a couple of examples of this. The first one being for PvP. Player A buys a set of armor from the cash shop, and the armor has ratings that provide more protection than any other armor that is available in the game without a purchase. As such, when player B is challenged by player B cannot defeat player A, even though player B is more skilled at playing the game than player A, because of the additional protection the purchased armor offers player A. A real-world example of this would be ZT Online, an Eastern Market free-to-play MMO. Our PvE example. A game is designed with mechanics that require players to need a certain level of protection and a certain level of damage production in order to progress in the game. Said items are only available for purchase from the cash shop. Equivalent items of level are not available to the player in the game without the real money purchase. A real-world example of this would be ALODS Online. Generally speaking, in that game prior to March 2011, it had undergone some changes, but at that time, before March 2011, they had implemented a death penalty, and the only ways to remove the death penalty and its detriments was to make a purchase of an item or items from the cash shop. No way to do it otherwise in-game. And so there you go. We have our official definition of pay to win and our two examples from PvP and PvE. And there we have it. First time here, anywhere on the interwebs, the official definition of pay to win. But what does this mean for the discussion at hand? Basically, if we're getting back to what we were talking about last week, pay to win is generally used as a detriment to the free-to-play business model. Just because it's free to play, just because you have a cash shop, doesn't mean you're automatically getting pay to win. That's an asinine argument. Yes, there are some cases. There are games out there now, big and small, to where, yes, like ALODS Online, they have pay to win elements, or they are purely pay to win. But you take most of the major releases, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Elder Scrolls Online. We're talking about these big games here that either were subscription, went free to play, or games that have been built from the ground up to be free to play, like Planetside 2. Just because these games are free to play, just because a game decides to go free to play or is being built from free to play, does not automatically mean it's pay to win. Sorry, folks. Pay to win is not the same as free to play. One is an opinion, essentially. The other is a business model. So just like a subscription doesn't guarantee you a better community than free to play, just like a subscription does not guarantee you access to all content without ever having to pay anything again, is not true. Just like a subscription does not guarantee a better quality game or better updates or more frequent updates than a free to play game gets, a free to play game does not guarantee you're getting pay to win. If you think a game that has a cash shop automatically means it's a pay to win game, well then guess what? The Elder Scrolls Online is pay to win. It's already confirmed, unless plans change between now and release. The game is going to have a cash shop. Therefore, if you think a cash shop means pay to win, the Elder Scrolls is going to be pay to win. So if you were all excited about playing the Elder Scrolls and you're so excited that it has a subscription, sorry mate, your game is pay to win because it has a cash shop. I mean, really, what it boils down to is that these arguments that people use to bash free to play, that are used as a detriment to free to play, they're just asinine arguments. They're not guarantees of anything. What it boils down to, just like gaming in and of itself, gaming is a very personal experience. How you derive fun from it is a personal experience based on your playstyle, based on your personal beliefs. You don't need, shockingly enough, you don't need to justify those. If you like a subscription, if that's just what you like to pay that monthly fee for your entertainment, for your game, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't use your personal preference, or don't think your personal preference is better than the other. It's not. Subscription is not better than free to play. Free to play is not better than subscription, and you can throw buy to play in there with both of them. That's just a personal preference. You really don't need to justify it, and you certainly don't need to justify it using invalid arguments like you're going to have a better community, like you're going to have access to all content, like your game is going to be more quality, have higher production values, have better content cadence because you have a subscription. That's not a guarantee. Like I said last week, there are just as many subscription game examples that you would think they were free to play the way these people are arguing, because they had bad communities, they weren't high quality games, their updates were few and far between, they had extra content you had to pay for. So subscription guarantees you none of that. If that's your personal preference, that's fine, but don't use these four bullet point arguments to try to justify that, because in the end, generally speaking, in the examples we have out there now, in the games we have out there now, none of it really holds true. Now, what does this get down to? Is the Elder Scrolls right in having a subscription, and not just but your basic traditional subscription model with a cash shop thrown in, by the way? Again, personally speaking, just my opinion. If you don't like it, well, get over it. Remember, that's our rule. If you don't like it, get over it. No, Elder Scrolls Online will not be able to survive with a pure subscription model and a basic traditional subscription model in today's market. The pendulum has swung the other way. When MMOs started, and basically up until the last 2 or 3 years, the subscription model was the business model for MMOs. ArenaNet started to buck the trend with Guild Wars back in 2005. They're continuing that with their sequel to that game. But in the meantime, over the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen the pendulum swing the other way. Subscriptions was the mainstream. Free-to-play was the niche. Free-to-play was the indie. I don't want to insult indie industry there, but free to play was that niche market, was the small market, was not the mainstream market. Now it's gone the other way. The gaming community has looked at free to play, it has experienced free to play, and now that's what the gaming community wants. It sees it can be done, and can be done well, can be done reasonably, to where it is fair not only for the company but for the consumer. Getting back to our first episode, a business model has to be fair to the consumer as much as it has to be able to make money for the business. Free to play has been established to be able to do that, and it doesn't automatically mean pay to win. It doesn't automatically mean you're going to get a bad community, you're going to get a lower quality game with lower production values. You got to remember, production values are different from quality. Just because a game looks pretty doesn't mean it is a good, high quality game. Just means it has a high production value for graphics. The rest of the stuff that makes up the production value, like the writing, the mechanics, the gameplay, all that other stuff that's under the hood, that's not good too. Doesn't matter how pretty your game is, your game's going to stink. And again, it doesn't, regardless of the business model you use too. It's going to stink. Whether you're a subscription, it's going to stink whether you're free to play, and you're not going to make money with it with either model. So, can Elder Scrolls survive with a subscription? It will survive. It will not survive with the traditional subscription model. At the very least, they might have been better off just going with the hybrid subscription model, which, a good example of that is Star Wars: The Old Republic, Rift. Basically the games that were subscription went free to play and are still at some level maintaining a premium membership or a subscription membership. That's the new hybrid of the free to play model, to where yes, the game is free to play, but if you subscribe or if you have a premium membership, you're getting, more benefit in the game from that. They might have been better off going that direction. Now, that's not to say, subscription has gone niche, free to play has gone mainstream. Like I said, pendulum has swung the other way. Subscription is really the niche market now. Free to play has become mainstream. Now, subscription is not going to go away. A subscription is not going to die. There will always be games that have a subscription. We already know what the big one is. Even though they're showing signs, there has been talk about them going free to play. It's not going to happen soon, but yes, World of Warcraft will eventually go free to play. They've already they're dipping their toe in the water, let's say. But there's other games like EVE Online and of course Final Fantasy 14, which are subscription-based games, and in the case of EVE, has survived a long time and has increased subscriptions over that time. So yes, subscriptions have a place, but it's going to be niche. It's going to appeal to a smaller audience. It's like EVE Online. They've reached 500,000 subs. It took them about 10 years to do so. 10 years just to reach the point they are now with the subscription. Now, of course, that's based on what the type of game is. But again, it's niche. It's a niche game. It's appealing to a specific core audience, and that's how they can survive with a subscription, because that's how they planned their money around it. That's how they planned the business model. They didn't plan on getting 8 million subs like WoW did. They planned on appealing to a smaller core audience, and that's what they do well. Same thing with Final Fantasy 14. Final Fantasy 14 can maintain a subscription because it's appealing to a smaller core audience, and that's what they're building the game around. That's how they will survive, because they've planned for that. Now, you're talking about mainstream games. That's why all these mainstream games have quote-unquote failed as subscription models, because they were shooting for pie in the sky. They were shooting, hey, WoW got 8 million people to pay monthly for their game, so we should be able to do that too. And they have been high quality games. I mean, just the fact that they've gone free to play and have become more popular since then, have become more profitable since then, means that yes, these games don't necessarily suck. It's just that the market changed, and their original business model did not work because they planned for something and the market changed and they can't sustain it. The same thing with Elder Scrolls Online. The market has changed. They're going for a wider audience. They're going for a big audience. They're going for an audience in an established IP that is not used to paying monthly to be able to continue to play the game. So that's going to hurt them a little bit. At least with Final Fantasy XIV, they've already had an MMO type release in that series. And of course the game itself was originally released as a new MMO. The game mechanics stunk, but the trend is there. The players have already expected it. Here, if MMO players looking at the game, we already expect it. It's not that big a deal. We know what comes with the MMO ground, but that's not what ZeniMax is shooting for. They're not shooting just for the MMO player. They're shooting for the Elder Scrolls fan base. And that does not, while there may be us MMO players who are part of that fan base, there's a lot of players who are not MMO players, are not used to paying that monthly fee. That's going to be a tough sell for them. And then you're trying to go cross-platform on top of that. That's another issue. You got console players who, again, like single-player gamers, are used to buying a box for one price and being able to play the game when and how you want without having to pay additional fee. And on top of that, depending on how the contract situation is worked out between Microsoft and Sony, console players might have to pay an additional fee in order to play the game on top of the subscription. So console players might actually be paying more to play the Elder Scrolls Online than typical MMO PC player. That's going to be another tough sell. And ZeniMax is not in a good position to be able to dictate their terms to Microsoft or dictate their terms to Sony. Now, Sony has a tradition of working with developers. So ZeniMax is in a better position with Sony. Microsoft, well, enough said. We don't even have to go open up that can of worms. ZeniMax, they're going to have problems with Microsoft. So if they're trying to push for a big release, a popular game, and a large community, they're putting themselves behind the eight ball with a subscription. I mean, ultimately, yes. Just like with Star Wars The Old Republic, there's going to be a bunch of people coming to the game, but we're going to see a big drop-off. They are in a little bit better position based on some of their back-end stuff, based on their server structure, but ultimately, in my opinion, I foresee the Elder Scrolls Online eventually going free to play. I mean, we can say they're already hedging their bet on that front with the cash shop. They're a subscription game launching with the cash shop. So I think even ZeniMax is trying to hedge their bets. They've got a lot of work to do ahead of them. But anyway, back to bullet point number 4, pay to win. A cash shop. I don't know. I can say this till I'm blue in the face, and I think I will. A cash shop does not mean you're pay to win. Like I said, Elder Scrolls Online has a cash shop. If you're a player who prefers a subscription and who is applauding ZeniMax for their decision to go with a subscription because you think a cash shop means pay to win, your subscription game, according to your own beliefs, will be pay to win because there's a cash shop. Like I said, it's an asinine argument. You gotta think logically about this. So, what about pay to win? We've already provided the definition. What do you think? I mean, are you for a subscription? Are you for free to play? And what do you think about pay to win? Leave us a comment below and let us know what you think. Ultimately, like a lot of things, like I said before, like a lot of things in the gaming industry, in the gaming community, no matter how many official definitions we may have, we've got the official one right here, it's going to come down to personal preference. Ultimately, that's what this is, personal preference. Like I said, a subscription model is not better than a free-to-play model. A free-to-play model is not inherently better than a subscription model. It's based on what you prefer as a gamer according to your play style and your personal beliefs. Same thing with pay to win. Now I'm sure there are a lot of people that disagree with this official definition based on their personal preferences. I mean, you do a little bit of searching out there, you look at some forums that discuss this topic. There's some people that believe a cash shop selling a mini pet, just a virtualated pixels that do absolutely nothing in game but hang next to your character, is pay to win. So that's why ultimately this argument cannot be won, because people are going to have their own personal preference, and ultimately what it comes down to is you have to judge each game on its own merits. That's what this is really about. That's what this debate with the Elder Scrolls Online is about. Now, you have to judge the game on your own personal preference. Don't judge it just on the business model and you think one business model is better than the other. Is the game good? Doesn't matter what the business model is. Is the game good? Is it going to provide to you what you want out of a game, regardless of the business model? Same thing with pay to win. You've got to, whatever you believe pay to win to be, you've got to look at the game and say, yes, I think this is pay to win. If you think a game is pay to win, then don't play it. Don't go into the game forums and saying, this game sucks, it needs to be changed because it's pay to win, or this cash shop is pay to win, or that's pay to win. If you, based on your personal playstyle, your personal preferences, believe something is not to your liking, then move along. Look for something that is to your liking, just like I did with Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2. Based on my enjoyment of the original, based on what enjoyment I get out of how I play a game, what I'm looking for in a game. Guild Wars 1 met that. Guild Wars 1, the business model met it. Guild Wars 1, the cash shop, when they implemented that, met it. And all the underlying stuff, the design, everything else. Guild Wars 1 to me is a superior game in every aspect to Guild Wars 2, based on the enjoyment I got out of it and based on the enjoyment and how I want to play a game, and more specifically how they designed their MMO elements. I looked at Guild Wars 2, I followed it, I was excited for it when it was announced, but I was a smart consumer. I followed the game. I looked at what ArenaNet wanted to accomplish with Guild Wars 2. And as more information was released, as the players began to see what the game was about, I made the educated decision that Guild Wars 2 was not the game I wanted to play. It was not the game that I would ultimately derive enjoyment out of. So I did not buy the game. I saved my money for something else that I found derived enjoyment out of. Star Wars: The Old Republic. You know, say what you want. The game's more popular now than it was with a subscription. Whether you believe it to be a WoW clone or whether you believe it to have high production values or good quality is irrelevant. If it's not the game for you, then don't play it. Don't complain about how it was made. just don't play it. Go find something that's more fitting for you. I played it. I enjoyed it. I'm still playing it. That's why I have 2 accounts for it, because it is a game I am highly enjoying. And again, that's what you gotta do when you're looking at cash shops, when you're looking at free to play. Stop automatically equating free to play with pay to win, because it's just not true. Based on a reasonable definition from which, the definition has arrived from the origins of the term itself. Something you think is pay to win, then move on. For a lot of people, it may not be pay to win, and even if it is pay to win, if the rest of the game is enjoyable, if they're getting enjoyment out of it, then more power to them. I'm not going to blast them because they enjoy something. That's completely personal. And ultimately, that's what these debates are about. How you get enjoyment out of your gaming life. But there we have it. As I said, what do you think? Leave us a comment below. And join us next time on Awesome Sauce for Games. Don't forget our website. We're still working on a lot more good stuff for you. We've got Defiance fan page. We've got a Star Wars Old Republic fan page. We've even got some classic wizardry in there for you guys. If you like what you see, please send a donation our way so we can keep it coming. Like I said, we got bills to pay. Every little bit that, if you like us, hey, much appreciated. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Until next time, I will see you in game.